was alive. When police cut through the lock and opened the shipping container, Rachel Stewart could barely lift her head. 5 days in complete darkness, no food, 2 bottles of water, a bucket. That was it. Something her kidnapper didn't know about. She'd kept her phone hidden, she'd saved the battery, and on day 5, for exactly 17 seconds, she'd gotten 1 bar of signal. 1 text message, 1 word, help. That 17-second ping led police to an abandoned warehouse in Dandenong, to a basement, to a locked metal box, to Rachel, barely conscious but alive. But here's the thing. Police already knew who took her. They already had video of the entire abduction, audio of her screaming, evidence that would convict her kidnapper. How? A Christmas gift. A $200 dashcam her father gave her that she thought was pointless. A device she'd forgotten was even there. The dashcam recorded everything. Every second. Every word. Every scream. This is Melbourne, Australia, March 16th, 2016. This is how Rachel Stewart vanished in broad daylight from a busy parking lot, and how a forgotten dashcam and 1 17-second phone signal saved her life when she should have died in that box. Rachel Ann Stewart was 29 years old in March 2016. She lived in Glen Waverley, a suburb in Melbourne's southeast. She worked as a marketing coordinator for a tech company, a job she genuinely enjoyed. She shared a 2-bedroom apartment with her best friend, Emma Chen, someone she'd known since university. They'd studied communications together at Monash, became inseparable, and decided to rent together after graduation. Rachel was the organized one, the responsible one. Emma joked that Rachel's side of the apartment looked like a showroom, while Emma's was lived in. Rachel kept everything tidy. She paid rent on time. She tracked her finances in spreadsheets. She had her life together. She'd grown up in Bendigo, a regional city about 150 kilometers northwest of Melbourne. Her parents, David and Margaret Stewart, still lived in the same house where Rachel had spent her childhood. Rachel was an only child, close with her parents despite the distance. She called them twice a week, visited once a month for Sunday lunch. David was a retired accountant. Margaret was a former primary school teacher. Quiet, dependable people who'd raised Rachel with steady values. At 29, Rachel's life had rhythm. She'd been dating James Mitchell for 8 months, a physiotherapist who was thoughtful, made her laugh, integrated well with her friends. They weren't living together yet, but had discussed it. Her job was going well. She'd recently received a promotion to senior marketing coordinator with a salary increase she was saving to buy her first property. She went to yoga classes twice a week. She met friends for brunch on Sundays. She had season tickets to the Melbourne Theatre Company with Emma. Her life was stable, normal, predictable. She had no idea that one decision, one tiny, meaningless decision she'd barely thought about, would determine whether she lived or died. That decision, not throwing away a Christmas gift from her father, she thought was completely unnecessary. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. First, you need to understand what happened in those 38 seconds. The 38 seconds when the security camera couldn't see her, when everything changed, when Rachel Stewart's normal, predictable life became a nightmare. Rachel drove a 2014 white Toyota Corolla. She kept it meticulously maintained, serviced on schedule, interior always clean. About 6 months before March 2016, her father, David, had given her a dashcam. As a Christmas gift, David had read about insurance fraud schemes, people deliberately causing accidents to claim damages. He worried about Rachel driving in Melbourne traffic. The dashcam was mid-range. It recorded both forward-facing and interior cabin views, activated by motion or when the engine was running. Rachel had installed it, but barely thought about it afterward. It was just there. A small black device mounted on the windshield, recording her daily drives. She had no idea it would save her life. Wednesday, March 16th, 2016, started completely ordinary. Rachel woke at 6:30 a.m., went for a run, showered, dressed for work, black pants, light blue blouse, black flats, business casual. She caught the 8:15 train into the city, arriving at her office by 9. She spent the day in meetings, working on a campaign for a new product launch, eating lunch at her desk while reviewing social media metrics. Normal Wednesday. Around 2 p.m., she texted James, asked what he wanted for dinner. He suggested she pick up groceries, and he'd cook at her place. Rachel agreed. At 4 p.m., Rachel left work, caught the train back to Glen Waverley, arrived at the station at 4:25 p.m. Instead of walking home, she drove to Centerway Shopping Center, a medium-sized mall with a Woolworth supermarket and a large parking lot. She arrived at 4:32 p.m., parked her white Corolla in an open-air section space B47, about 50 meters from the supermarket entrance. Security footage would later show Rachel walking into Woolworth's at 4:34 p.m., pulling out a shopping trolley, moving through the store. She bought standard groceries, milk, bread, chicken breasts, vegetables, pasta, a bottle of red wine, orange juice, yogurt. Nothing unusual. At checkout, she used her debit card. Transaction time-stamped 4:55 p.m. Total, $67.30. Rachel chatted briefly with the cashier about the weather. It was a warm, late summer day, about 28 degrees Celsius. Rachel took her receipt, pushed her trolley toward the exit, and walked back toward her car. Security cameras captured Rachel crossing the parking lot at 4:57 p.m., pushing the trolley, looking at her phone. She reached her white Corolla at 4:58 p.m. The camera showed her opening the trunk, beginning to load groceries from the trolley into the trunk. 4:59 p.m. Rachel lifts bags of groceries, and then, at exactly 5 p.m., everything changed. A white van pulled in behind Rachel's car, a Ford Transit panel van. It positioned itself perfectly, directly behind her vehicle, blocking the security camera's view. For 38 seconds, the camera couldn't see Rachel, couldn't see her car, couldn't see what was happening. And in those 38 seconds, seconds that felt like an eternity to Rachel, something happened that would take police days to understand. Because while the shopping center cameras couldn't see what was happening in that blind spot, another camera could. And it was recording everything. At 5:38 p.m., 38 seconds after the white van arrived, it pulled away, drove out of the parking lot. Rachel's car remained in space. B47. The trunk was open. The driver's door was open. The shopping trolley sat next to the car with one grocery bag still inside. But Rachel Stewart was gone. Gone. Just gone. In 38 seconds. At 6:15 p.m., Emma Chen called Rachel's mobile phone. It went straight to voicemail. Emma wasn't immediately concerned Rachel might be driving, might have her phone on silent. But at 6:45 p.m., when Rachel still hadn't come home and wasn't answering, Emma started to worry Rachel was reliable. She would have texted if plans changed. Emma called James Mitchell. He hadn't heard from Rachel since their 2 p.m. text exchange. James said he'd try calling. He did. Several times. All went to voicemail. At 7:30 p.m., Emma called Rachel's parents in Bendigo. They hadn't heard from her either. Margaret Stewart tried calling Rachel's phone repeatedly. No answer. At 8 p.m., David Stewart called Victoria Police. The initial response was measured. Adults are allowed to go missing. Police can't force someone to maintain contact with family. But when David explained Rachel was supposed to be home hours ago, wasn't answering her phone, had made dinner plans she wouldn't abandon, the officer took more interest. David provided Rachel's details, her car registration, her last known location. At 8:45 p.m., A patrol unit was dispatched to Centerway Shopping Center. Officers found Rachel's white Toyota Corolla still in space, B47, exactly where she'd parked over 4 hours earlier. The trunk was closed now. Someone had closed it at some point. The driver's door was also closed, but the car was locked. Appeared undisturbed. Officers ran the plates, confirmed it was Rachel Stewart's vehicle. They noted the car's location and reported back. At 9:30 p.m., Detective Senior Constable Andrew Morrison was assigned to investigate. He drove to the shopping center, examined Rachel's car. It was locked. He obtained permission from the Stewart family to open it. Using registration information, Morrison got the spare key from Toyota and opened the vehicle. Inside, everything appeared normal. Rachel's gym bag was on the back seat, sunglasses in the center console, registration papers in the glove box. Nothing seemed disturbed or out of place. Morrison opened the trunk. The groceries Rachel had purchased were there, some items still in Woolworth's bags, others loose. The milk was warm, obviously been sitting for hours. The chicken was starting to smell, but the groceries were there, which was strange. If Rachel had left voluntarily, why leave her shopping? If someone had abducted her, why leave the car with her belongings? Morrison requested security footage from the shopping center. By 11 p.m., he was reviewing video in the center's security office. He watched Rachel shop, check out, walk to her car. He watched her begin loading groceries. Then the white van appeared, blocking the view. When the van left 38 seconds later, Rachel was gone. Morrison rewound, watched again. The van's arrival seemed deliberate. It pulled in directly behind Rachel's car, despite other empty spaces nearby. Morrison froze the frame showing the van's license plate. It was obscured by dirt or mud, deliberately making it unreadable. This was not random. This was planned. By midnight, Rachel's disappearance was being treated as a major incident. Additional detectives were assigned. Rachel's phone records were pulled. Her last phone activity was at 4:56 p.m. She'd checked Instagram while walking through the parking lot. After that, her phone went offline, either turned off or the battery died. Attempts to ping the phone's location yielded nothing. It was either off or destroyed. Police interviewed the Woolworth's cashier who'd served Rachel. She remembered Rachel as friendly and normal. Nothing unusual. Police interviewed other shoppers who'd been in the parking lot around 5 p.m. Nobody remembered seeing anything suspicious. Nobody heard screams. No signs of struggle. Whoever took Rachel had done it quickly and quietly. The white Ford Transit van became the focus. Police reviewed all security footage from the shopping center, tracking the van's movements. It had entered the parking lot at 4:52 p.m., 8 minutes before Rachel reached her car. It had driven slowly through the lot, as if looking for something, or someone. When Rachel appeared, the van had repositioned, waited until she began loading groceries, then pulled in behind her. After 38 seconds, it left. Exiting the parking lot at 5:01 p.m., heading east on Springvale Road. Traffic cameras caught it heading toward Dandenong, a suburb southeast of Glen Waverley. After that, the van disappeared from camera coverage. License plate analysis was impossible due to the obscured plate. Vehicle identification experts estimated it was a 2010 to 2013 Ford Transit White, with minor body damage on the left rear panel. This narrowed the pool, but there were still thousands of such vans in Victoria. Thursday morning, March 17th, Rachel's disappearance hit the news. Woman vanishes from shopping center car park, read headlines. Rachel's photo, a professional headshot from her company website, showing her smiling in business attire, was broadcast across Melbourne police, set up a dedicated tip line. Calls flooded in, reported sightings, theories, speculation. Each was investigated. Rachel's apartment was searched with Emma's permission. Nothing seemed missing or disturbed. Rachel's laptop was analyzed. No concerning communications. No signs of threats or stalking. Her social media showed a normal, happy life. Her bank account showed the Woolworths transaction at 4:55 p.m. Then nothing. James Mitchell was interviewed extensively. He was working at his physiotherapy clinic from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. on March 16th. Multiple patients confirmed his presence. He was distraught, cooperating fully. He wasn't a suspect. Police examined Rachel's car more thoroughly, and that's when they found it. The dashcam. Detective Morrison removed the dashcam and took it to the technology forensics unit. The dashcam had 2 memory cards, one for forward-facing camera, one for interior cabin camera. Both had been recording when Rachel parked. Morrison loaded the footage and pressed play. What he saw would change everything about this investigation. The forward-facing camera showed Rachel's drive to the shopping center, her parking. Then, since the engine was off, the camera switched to motion-activated mode. It recorded when Rachel opened the driver's door to exit, capturing her walking toward the supermarket. Then it recorded when she returned with the trolley. The interior cabin camera, triggered by the trunk opening, showed Rachel from behind loading groceries. Then, at 5:02 p.m., the interior camera captured something crucial. A man appeared at the driver's side of Rachel's car, visible in the reflection of the rearview mirror. Partially in the frame, he was wearing dark clothing, a baseball cap pulled low, sunglasses despite the late afternoon hour. He moved quickly. The audio picked up Rachel's voice. "Oh, sorry, didn't see you there." Then a male voice, calm and quiet. "Don't scream. Don't make noise. Get in the trunk, now." Rachel's voice, terrified. "What? No, please." The man's voice, harder. "Get in the trunk or I'll shoot you right here. I have a gun. Get in. Now." Rachel's breathing became panicked, audible on the dashcam audio. She said, voice shaking, Okay, please don't hurt me." The camera showed movement, Rachel being forced toward the trunk. Then the trunk lid blocked the camera's view as it was opened wider. There were sounds of struggle, Rachel crying. The man saying, "Get in, lie down, shut up." Then the trunk slammed closed. The dashcam, no longer detecting motion in the cabin, stopped recording. Detective Morrison felt sick watching the footage. Rachel had been abducted at gunpoint, in broad daylight, in a public parking lot. The man had forced her into her own car's trunk, and the dashcam had captured it all. Proof of abduction, the suspect's voice, partial images of him. Morrison immediately escalated the case. This was kidnapping, possibly with intent for ransom, or worse. The dashcam footage was analyzed frame by frame. Forensic audio specialists enhanced the man's voice. Forensic video specialists examined his partial images, estimating height, approximately 180 centimeters. Build, medium. Approximate age, 30s to 40s based on voice and movement. The baseball cap had no visible logos. The sunglasses obscured his face, but they had his voice. They had evidence Rachel was alive when placed in the trunk, terrified, but alive. The investigation now focused on finding the white van, and by extension, Rachel. Police released information about the van to media, asking the public for sightings. They didn't release the dashcam footage publicly. It was too traumatic and might compromise the investigation. But they confirmed Rachel had been abducted. The case became national news. Melbourne woman, kidnapped in daylight, read headlines across Australia. Rachel's parents traveled to Melbourne, stayed with Emma, coordinated with police. They made tearful appeals on television. Margaret Stewart begged whoever took Rachel to let her go. "She's our only child. Please don't hurt her. Please let her come home." But days passed with no credible leads. Friday, March 18th. Saturday, March 19th. Rachel's phone never came back online. No ransom demands were made. If this was a kidnapping for money, the kidnapper wasn't communicating. This suggested something worse, that Rachel had been taken for other reasons. Detectives worked around the clock. They reviewed hours of traffic camera footage, trying to track the white van. They interviewed hundreds of potential witnesses. They checked known offenders, anyone with history of abductions or assaults. Nothing connected by Sunday, March 20th, 4 days after Rachel's disappearance. Hope was fading. Statistics showed that abduction victims not found within 48 hours often aren't found alive. Rachel had been missing for 4 days. But somewhere in that abandoned warehouse, locked in darkness, Rachel Stewart was still alive. Barely. She'd been in that metal container for 4 days. No food. 2 bottles of water she'd rationed carefully. A bucket. Complete darkness. No sense of time. She'd screamed until her voice gave out. Nobody came. She'd tried her phone multiple times. No signal. The metal container underground blocked everything. But Rachel hadn't given up. She still had her battery, and she was about to do something desperate. Something that would either save her life or reveal to her captor that she still had a way to call for help. Monday, March 21st. 5 days after the abduction, at 2:47 p.m., Rachel's phone suddenly pinged online. For 17 seconds, the ping came from a cell tower in Dandenong South, an industrial area southeast of Melbourne. Police immediately triangulated the approximate location, within 500 meters of the tower. Detective Morrison rushed to the area with tactical response units. The zone included warehouses, factories, storage facilities, many abandoned or underused. Police began systematic searches, going building to building. At 4:15 p.m., officers found an abandoned warehouse on Edison Road. The building was derelict, windows broken, graffiti-covered walls. In the back parking area, partially hidden behind dumpsters, was a white Ford Transit van with mud obscuring the license plates. Tactical officers approached carefully. The van appeared empty. They ran the VIN number. The van had been reported stolen from a construction site in Dandenong 2 weeks earlier. This was the van from the shopping center. Officers secured the area and searched the warehouse. The building was 3 stories, mostly empty, filled with debris and evidence of squatters. They called Rachel's name, listening for response. Nothing. They searched systematically, room by room. At 5:03 p.m., in a basement storage room, they found a locked metal storage container, about 2 meters by 3 meters, like a shipping container. Officers called for cutting tools. At 5:21 p.m., they cut the lock and opened the door. Inside, in the dark, cramped space, was Rachel Stewart. She was alive, barely conscious, severely dehydrated, but alive. She'd been locked in the container for 5 days. No food. Minimal water darkness. She was lying on the metal floor, still wearing the clothes from Wednesday, the black pants and blue blouse, now filthy and torn. Her wrists showed ligature marks from being bound. Her face was bruised. When light flooded the container, Rachel shielded her eyes. Whimpering, an officer spoke gently. "Rachel, we're police! You're safe! We're getting you out!" Paramedics rushed in. Rachel was barely able to speak, severely dehydrated, hypothermic, despite the warm weather outside. They placed her on a stretcher and rushed her to Dandenong Hospital. At the hospital, doctors stabilized Rachel. She was suffering from dehydration, malnutrition, shock, psychological trauma. Physically, beyond the dehydration and bruising, she hadn't been seriously harmed. No sexual assault, no major injuries. But she'd endured 5 days in darkness, not knowing if she'd die there. Detective Morrison waited until doctors cleared him to speak with Rachel. She was in a hospital bed. IV fluids running, wrapped in blankets, her parents beside her holding her hands. Morrison approached gently. Rachel, I'm Detective Morrison. Can you tell me what happened? Who did this to you? Rachel's voice was hoarse from dehydration and screaming in the container, but she spoke slowly, with frequent pauses. On Wednesday, she'd been loading groceries when a man approached. He'd seemed to come from nowhere. He'd told her to get in the trunk or he'd shoot her. She believed he had a gun. She saw something in his hand, though she couldn't confirm it was real. Terrified, she'd complied. He'd forced her into the trunk of her own car, cable tied her wrists, slammed the lid. She'd been in complete darkness. The car drove for maybe 20 minutes. She couldn't be sure. Time distorted when you're terrified and in a trunk. Then the car stopped. She heard the man get out. The trunk opened. She was in what looked like a warehouse parking area. The man pulled her out, forced her into the building, downstairs to the basement, into the metal container. He'd thrown in 2 bottles of water and a bucket. Then locked her inside. She'd screamed until her voice gave out. Nobody came. For 5 days, Rachel existed in darkness. She had no sense of time. She'd drunk the water sparingly, making it last. She'd tried to conserve energy. She'd used her phone. The man hadn't found it in her pocket. But there was no signal in the metal container underground. She'd turned it off to save battery, turning it on periodically to try for signal. On Monday, 5 days in, she'd tried. Again. Saw 1 brief bar of signal. She'd managed to type a text to her father. Just the word, help, before the signal vanished. That text never sent fully, but the attempted connection had pinged the tower, giving police the location. Rachel had saved herself. Rachel described her abductor. White man, maybe 40s, average height and build, wearing dark clothes, baseball cap, sunglasses. She hadn't seen his face clearly. He'd barely spoken beyond giving orders. He hadn't sexually assaulted her, hadn't explained why he'd taken her. This baffled investigators. Why abduct someone and then just lock them away? No ransom demand, no assault. What was the motive? Rachel had one other detail. When the man had grabbed her at the shopping center, she'd noticed a tattoo on his left forearm, a scorpion. Distinctive with exaggerated claws. This detail would be crucial for identification. But the real question remained. Why? Why kidnap a random woman from a parking lot, lock her in a container with 2 bottles of water, and then nothing? Craig Morrison's motive, when police finally got him to confess, was so stupid, so pathetic, that it would make you angry. But it would also explain why Rachel's refusal to cooperate had saved her life. Police searched the warehouse thoroughly. They found evidence someone had been there recently. Food wrappers, cigarette butts, a sleeping bag in an upstairs room. DNA was collected from the cigarette butts. The metal container where Rachel had been held was processed for fingerprints. Partials were found on the exterior lock and door handle. The white van was towed for forensic examination. Inside, they found cable ties matching those used on Rachel A. baseball cap, and critically, more DNA evidence, including hair strands. Rachel's car was re-examined. Fingerprints on the trunk lid matched the partials from the container. The same person had handled both. The DNA from the cigarette butts and hair was run through databases. On Tuesday, March 22nd, they got a hit. The DNA matched a man named Craig Morrison, age 41, with a criminal history including theft, assault, and drug offenses. He'd been released from prison 8 months earlier after serving 3 years for armed robbery. His last known address was in Dandenong. Police obtained Craig Morrison's file photo. He had a distinctive scorpion tattoo on his left forearm, exactly as Rachel described. A warrant was issued for Morrison's arrest. Police traced Morrison to a boarding house in Dandenong. On Wednesday, March 23rd, tactical units raided the address at 6 a.m. Morrison was arrested in his room without incident. In his possession were items clearly stolen from Rachel's car: her sunglasses, a USB drive from her glove box. When confronted with evidence, DNA, fingerprints, Rachel's eyewitness identification of his tattoo, the dashcam footage, Morrison's defenses collapsed. He admitted to the abduction. And his motive was exactly as pathetic as investigators feared. He'd been watching the shopping center for days, looking for someone driving a nice car alone. He'd planned to abduct someone, force them to give him their bank pins, clean out their accounts, then release them. He'd chosen Rachel randomly because she drove alone, because she seemed small enough to overpower easily. But when Morrison had forced Rachel into the container, his plan had fallen apart. Rachel had refused to give him her pin, knowing he might kill her once he got what he wanted. Morrison, not particularly intelligent or organized, hadn't known what to do. He couldn't let Rachel go. She could identify him. He couldn't kill her. He claimed he'd never intended to kill anyone. So he'd left her locked up while he figured out his next move. Days passed. Morrison had been too paranoid to return to the warehouse, afraid police would be watching. He'd been essentially frozen with indecision when police found Rachel Morrison's confession confirmed Rachel's account. He was charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, theft, assault. The trial began in August 2016. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: the dashcam footage showing the abduction, Rachel's testimony, forensic evidence linking Morrison to the crime scene, and Van Morrison's confession. The dashcam footage was particularly damning. Jurors watched as Morrison forced Rachel into the trunk at gunpoint, heard her terrified pleas. The footage showed everything. The audio captured everything. "Please don't hurt me. Get in the trunk or I'll shoot you." Okay, please don't hurt me." The courtroom was silent as the footage played. The defense argued Morrison hadn't intended serious harm, that this was a robbery gone wrong, asking for leniency. The prosecution countered that Morrison had locked a woman in a metal box for 5 days in conditions that could have killed her, showing complete disregard for human life. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. At sentencing in October 2016, Rachel gave a victim impact statement. She stood in court, looked at Craig Morrison, the man who had taken 5 days of her life, who had locked her in darkness and left her to die. And she spoke. "You took 5 days of my life," Rachel told Morrison. "You tried to take everything, but I survived. I'm here. I'm alive. You failed." She described the psychological aftermath of her ordeal: nightmares, PTSD, fear of parking lots and enclosed spaces, difficulty trusting people. She'd taken medical leave from her job, was in intensive therapy. Her relationship with James had ended. The trauma had changed her, and she'd needed space to heal. But she also described her determination to recover. "You don't get to win," she said. "You don't get to destroy me. I survived 5 days in that box because I refused to give up. I kept my phone hidden. I saved my battery. I waited for that one moment, that one 17-second signal, and I took it." She looked directly at Morrison. "My father gave me a dash cam as a Christmas gift. I thought it was unnecessary. It saved my life. It captured everything you did. Your voice, your threats, my screams. Without that footage, you might have walked free. But you won't. Because that dash cam and my refusal to give up brought you here." The courtroom was silent. The judge sentenced Craig Morrison to 18 years in prison, with a non-parole period of 14 years for the kidnapping and related charges. Judge Helen Patterson stated, "You subjected Miss Stewart to a terrifying ordeal that could easily have resulted in her death. Only her resourcefulness and police's swift action saved her. You are a danger to society." Morrison showed no emotion as the sentence was read. Rachel sat in the gallery, her parents beside her, Emma beside her. Finally, after 8 months, she had closure. Not healing, that would take years. But closure. Justice had been served. Rachel's recovery was gradual but steady. She moved out of the apartment she'd shared with Emma. Too many memories of the night she didn't come home. She relocated to a different suburb, started fresh. She continued therapy, working through PTSD and trauma. She eventually returned to work, though in a different role that didn't require the same public interaction. She reconnected with her parents, spending more time in Bendigo, rebuilding sense of safety. 2 years after her ordeal, Rachel began speaking publicly about her experience, working with victim support organizations, sharing her story to help others. She emphasized the importance of the dashcam. "My father gave me that dashcam as a Christmas gift," she'd say in interviews. "I thought it was unnecessary. It saved my life. It captured my abduction, gave police evidence they needed, helped convict the man who took me." Sales of dashcams in Melbourne spiked dramatically after Rachel's case made headlines. People realized these devices weren't just for recording accidents. They could provide critical evidence in abductions or assaults. Dashcam manufacturers began marketing their products explicitly as safety devices, not just insurance tools. Rachel's father, David, became an inadvertent advocate for dashcam use, giving interviews about how a $200 device had made all the difference. Today, Rachel Stewart is 38 years old. She lives quietly, having largely stepped back from public advocacy. She's rebuilt her life piece by piece. The scars, psychological more than physical, remain. But she's learned to live with them. She credits her survival to several factors: the dashcam that recorded her abduction, her decision to keep her phone hidden and try for signal, the police's quick response to her phone ping, and her own mental strength during 5 days in darkness. Detective Morrison, who led the investigation, remained in contact with Rachel for years. He says her case changed how Victoria Police trains officers to respond to abductions. The dashcam footage became a teaching tool, showing how crucial technology can be in solving crimes. The warehouse where Rachel was held has been demolished. The site is now a small park with a memorial bench, not specifically for Rachel, but part of community redevelopment. Rachel visited once, shortly after the trial, needing to see the place in daylight, to reclaim some power over the location that had held such terror. She sat in the basement room where the container had been, now just an empty space, and cried. Then she left and never went back. She didn't need to. That place didn't define her anymore. Craig Morrison remains in prison. He's eligible for parole in 2030, though victims' advocates and the Stewart family will oppose his release. Rachel has stated she'll attend any parole hearing to speak against his release. She's determined Morrison serve his full sentence. She's also determined to ensure her case helps prevent others from experiencing what she endured. She's worked with parking lot security consultants, advising on camera placement and lighting to reduce blind spots where abductions might occur. She's advocated for panic buttons or emergency systems in parking areas. She's turned her trauma into purpose, helping create safer spaces for others. Every March 16th, the anniversary of her abduction, Rachel does something life-affirming. She travels somewhere new, or spends time with people she loves, or does something she's always wanted to try. She refuses to let that date be only about trauma. She reclaims it, year by year, as a day she survived, a day she proved she was stronger than the person who tried to destroy her. And every Christmas, she visits her father, David, and thanks him for the dashcam, that simple gift. That small device mounted on a windshield was the difference between a woman who disappeared without trace and a woman who came home. Rachel Stewart came home, traumatized, changed, but alive. And that, in the end, is everything. That $200 dashcam recorded 38 seconds that changed everything. Rachel screams, her abductor's threats, the moment she was forced into her own trunk. Without that footage, Craig Morrison might have walked free. Without that footage, police might never have identified him. Without that footage, Rachel's family might never have known what happened to her. But that dashcam was there, recording, capturing, preserving evidence. And one 17-second phone signal, one desperate attempt to connect, led police to an abandoned warehouse, to a basement, to a locked metal box, to Rachel, barely conscious, severely dehydrated, but alive. 38 seconds of darkness became the key to finding a woman who should never have been found alive. This is Melbourne, 2016. This is Rachel Stewart. And this is how a forgotten Christmas gift and 17 seconds of cell signal saved her life.